I had been in a position where I
Tell me the story or the day you realized that you said,
wanted to start my own business, but I don't have enough money.
so when did that idea first hit you?
Is really how successful people should be functioning, which is
It's always so easier than what we believe it is.
the best thing I ever bet on was myself.
Is it too late to start a business at 40 years old? So, Vic, I want to pick the story up when you were at Show Score. I was looking at your title, Vice President, Business Development, and I also looked at the salary for those particular titles. So it seemed like you were in a very lucrative career. Kind of paint me a picture of what life was like there.
Um, so Show Score was in a WeWork type situation. There were about six of us stuffed into a tiny office.
Okay.
I went from a very, I would say, luxurious job at Lincoln Center,
Hmm.
where I mean, salary to salary. I actually took a pay cut in order to join Show Score. Nothing severe, but it was enough that I thought I really believe in this company and I wanted to have stakes in the company and I wanted to have the pride of building something out with a team.
Hmm.
I had been in a position where I was a delegator and I wanted to be a doer. I really
Okay.
was looking forward to working alongside a team as opposed to, sitting in an office and telling other people what to do or giving advice.
Hmm.
I wanted to feel like I was doing the work alongside other people. But I think startup culture is intense. And so even
Right.
before I started that job, I had a lot of interviews so they could make sure that I would be the right fit. Um, Startup culture for me, at least particularly with Show Score, it really was 24/7. I really believed, despite the fact that I had three kids going into this job, and happily married, I was going to have to do a ton of work. And so I dove in because I believed in the idea that the company had, which was we want to hear how audiences and fans um, react to shows, what they like, what they don't like. It was a mystery to me that you would pay hundreds of dollars to rent a hotel room, right? And you could read
Hmm.
reviews of a hotel room online. But if you wanted to go see a show, all you could read were reviews from people from the New York Times to the New York Post, and you couldn't really necessarily ask your neighbor what they thought of a show. I like there being a voice for people who actually paid for tickets, people who actually like went and weren't necessarily educated in dramaturgy, but more just wanted to say, "Oh my god, I had the best time! This show or this experience was so much fun."
Right. So if you're that connected to the company, when was the first idea? Because when I read the articles, you wrote it back in 2017. So I think the time that you were at Show Score. So when did that idea first hit you? If you were, at this company, you enjoyed the company, that hey, I want to leave what I'm doing here. This lucrative career sounds like you seeked it out and go and start your own business.
So it was actually really scary, to be honest with you. I was at Show Score for about 2 years, and I remember my boss interviewing me and saying to me, "Hey, you get the best people for about 2 years because if they're truly good, either they're going to take over your company or they're going to go and run their own thing." And so what ended up happening with me, and he brightly predicted about 2 years in, there were a lot of challenges to being at a startup that was not your own.
The questions that you're missing. So you're there, and it sounds like to me it's just unfulfillment in a sense that led you to the thought of hey, starting my own business because you weren't getting what you thought you were going to get.
I think it was I was fulfilled, but I was burnt out.
Burnt. Okay.
And I think I'm burning, and I continue to burn myself out, but I believe that you only have um, you only have so much time in your life.
Absolutely.
And during a certain time, about 70% of your time you spend at work, right? So
Hmm.
5 days a week out of seven, probably thinking about it at other times. And so if you have 70% of your life at work, you better love what you do.
Absolutely.
And the second you start to say, oh, I don't want to go to work today, or oh my gosh, and it's not just a 1 day thing, but it's an ongoing thing, that's on you to fix. I am the opposite of a victim. I think that I wake up every day and I lead my life, and the choices that I make and the things that I do are all on me.
I
Bad
love
things
that.
happen, right? You get clients that love you. You get clients that are frustrated with you. You have good days, bad days. You have a coworker that decides to quit. You have a coworker that wants a higher salary. Every day is a new day. And you have to approach it that you can be 1% better every single day of your life.
I love that. I want to get to tell me the story or the day you realized that you said, okay, I'm leaving this company and start my own business. Tell me about the thoughts that were going through your mind on that day.
So I'll tell you, when I left Show Score, there was something in between. So it's important to talk about this because that leads to my decision. And I went out for a weekend to visit my best friend in upstate New York. And we went out to dinner and I complained to him about my job. And we were in the car and I complained to him about my job. And I talked about, oh, well, I've wanted to start my own business, but I don't have enough money and I won't have health insurance and I'll be scared. Everything will be a nightmare and I'm not going to be able to make this happen. And before we went to bed that night, he looked at me and he goes, tomorrow morning, you're going to wake up. You're going to write an email to your boss and you're going to quit your job. And I'm going to help you build a website and you're going to make this work. And you're going to start your own business. And, and I'll never listen to you complain this much again. Now, what I didn't realize is he was in the midst of a breakup with his girlfriend that weekend, but I was so self absorbed that I didn't even listen to my friend. I was so in my own head. I wasn't being a good friend. I had never asked how he was. I was so driven by anger and frustration that I wasn't really being present as a person. And so I called my husband and I was like, listen, I feel bad. I've just complained to Seth this whole weekend. I think I am really going to do this. And he was like, then do it. We all know this is what you want to do. So the fear was that I had to lock in at least two clients that I would be able to make enough money to walk away. And as soon as I had those two clients, I dove off the diving board. And it there just like when you have a kid, there's no right time to have a kid. There's no right time to start a startup, right? And so for me, at the time, I was 42 years old, so I was even older than 40. I had worked at a startup for 2 years, so I certainly had an idea of how hard that was. But I also had, it was like going to grad school, which I never went to grad school, but working at a startup and understanding like systems and ways of doing things and ways of talking to people and how to build a team. It was all there, right there in my head. And at first I thought, some people say I'm going to be an independent, freelancer. And for me, I decided I wanted to actually build a team and start hiring people. And and that was in 2019. And then by the time 2020 hit, like, forget it. You started to build the whole thing and it all got torn down all over again.
Yeah, everyone had that 2020 moment. So the conversation you had with your husband, it sounds like he was extremely supportive of that decision.
100%. And I think if the most important decision that you make in your life is the partner that you
Right.
choose. And my husband and I met when I was 19. So we were super young. But he believed in me then and he believes in me now. And believe you me, I'm not easy to live with because I'm a workaholic. And we have these three beautiful children. He really has been the main parent to them. I'm a parent, but he is the main parent. And something breaks or something happens, they go to him first. They'll go to me for like deep life questions, but they really want
Hmm.
their dad. Um, and that hurts sometimes because you want to be your kid's go-to. Um,
Right.
but I feel like I have two young daughters, young women now, and they got to see that mom just built a business one day and dad supported her. And circle of life. My husband got laid off last spring, and he came to work for us temporarily. And we ended up hiring him because he did such a good job. He's like an Meta Google whiz. And so
That's great.
bringing him to the table and having him work was the perfect mix for my team. And there's always a dynamic when you bring somebody in who's a dear friend or your spouse. But it's worked out that he supported me and then I supported him, and that's what partnership is all about. And we bring out the best in one another. And I just feel really fortunate to have him in my life and in my business.
Absolutely. Getting back to your story, you mentioned you had a friend that you spoke about to spoke to was sharing this information with, and you said you wanted to get two clients before you move forward. So it sounds like there was some sort of a plan. And what I want to illustrate to the audience of those that are 40 looking to start a business, do you recommend trying to have you know some clients already before you leave your job full time? How would you coach someone that's in the same position that you are? Say they're at a job, about to turn 40 and they want to leave their company. What advice would you give them? Can you walk me through a
Yeah,
process,
sure. I
coaching?
mean, it comes down to dollars and cents ultimately, right? And how many hours do you have in a day? So I'll start with the dollars and cents. The dollars and cents to me, where I calculated in my head that ultimately I needed to make, let's say, about $2,000 a week, ideally, right? I may not make that amount. I could probably live off 1,000 a week, but could I make 2,000 a week? And that meant that I would have to get two or three clients because the business I work in, it's weekly fees. So the people that I surrounded myself with, if they were able to, okay, someone's going to pay me 500 a week to do their social media, and someone's going to pay me 1,500 a week to do their marketing direction. Someone's going to pay me, right? All those little things had to add up to a certain amount of money. And so I figured out the calculation of what I needed to make, right? That doesn't happen overnight. So in the back of my head, I said, well, I promised this gentleman I would work for him, and I've got to stick around for about 6 months. So what can I do in this 6 month period to, in my free time? So if I'm working, 10 to 6 for him, and I knew I was working for a producer. So it would have looked bad if I had gone and worked for another producer doing producing. I didn't. I've always made sure if I leave a company, I'm leaving a company to go do something that is non compete. He wasn't trying to start a marketing agency, this guy I was working for. So I felt like I was doing something that wasn't against the grain. So yeah, I lined up two clients, and I had to make sure to do a good job for them. I had to leave that other job right away because I needed to now fully focus on my dream and my time and my work. And so I did. And there's that period of sort of you're scared because you have to pay your own taxes, you have to put money aside, you have to your own health insurance. And funny enough, my health insurance. Funniest thing is, I called my boss Tom Melcher from ShowScore, and I said I'm still scared because I don't have health insurance. And he said, Vic,
It's always so easier than what we believe it is.
yeah,
Like the mind just creates all these other issues. Like it's so difficult, but it's so simple sometimes.
it's so simple sometimes. But I think you do have to, if you want to feel, if you have a family to support, if you have bills to pay, sometimes you don't, it's not like somebody walks up with a check and says, here's a bunch of money for your dream. It's, this life is not as easy as Shark Tank. Those people who get
Right.
on Shark Tank, they worked a long time to get there. I think with me, the game has been, um, you have this much, you have to make this much money. How do you make that much money? Now, if it had been, and I was fully ready to do this, if I had started my new business and lost a client, I was ready to go work at Starbucks part time. I would have done whatever it took in order to do my business my way, my dream. And what ended up happening over the pandemic is theaters closed. And so I
Hmm.
just started a business. I had an assistant. I had to lay her off. I remember we had just a bunch of checks had come in. So I sent her extra money just because she was we were all temporary, but I felt like what would I do as a decent person?
Right.
And she understood because she's like, listen, I know, like my other clients are, everything's fallen down the drain, but I so appreciate that. I think I gave her a week and a half of pay to be like, I'm so sorry, because it was
Hmm.
when you're a temp, you're working hourly. Um, but then I hustled. I had a friend who ran a business selling wine refrigerators, and that business was booming during the pandemic because everybody was going to be entertaining at home.
Mm-hmm.
I went to visit him in his office one day, and he was just surrounded by paperwork and drowning and everything. And I said, "Can I help you?"
Right.
Worked and sold wine refrigerators. I learned how to sell refrigerators on Amazon and on Wayfair. I learned how to do social media for a wine refrigerator company. I did all sorts of crazy stuff, but always, always, always had something to do with theater in the background, or I was reading, or I was working.
That's an important story because I think it just shows the mindset of an entrepreneur, right? And I'm read a lot of comments like I mentioned on Reddit. It's too late. What should I do? But through that story, it's adding value. Like that's all business is finding a way to add value to others.
Yeah.
Which leads me into your business that you're starting now. So can you say that hey, your business is a success and it's table? Give me the name of your company again and
My
specifically what you
company
do.
is Table Seven Strategy.
Okay,
Yeah, and we do marketing, advertising, and sales strategy for live events.
okay,
So we work on something called Pixar Putt. Pixar
okay,
Putt, yeah, I'll start over. We work on something called Pixar Putt. Pixar Putt is a mini golf course with Pixar characters,
okay.
and a fellow friend and entrepreneur runs that. It's a licensed property that they travel everywhere with. One of our longest and oldest clients. I've worked with them forever, and it's really a matter of me figuring out how to sell tickets and get people to go to that property. So that's really satisfying. So that's number one. Number two, like we have a nice client roster. I've built a very nice team of folks. The hustle never ends.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking to you. We've had some great successes with some clients recently. I opened Boop the musical Saturday night, which is on Broadway, and that was super exciting.
That's really
I open another show off Broadway tonight called All the Beauty in the World. So there's a lot of work that's happening constantly and consistently. I could always be better. I could always do more. But I'll tell you the most satisfying thing about my job is I work with a really talented group of people because shows and projects come and go, but the people are wonderful and I love coming to work and I love working with them. Um, I love what I do, so I'm never bored. There's always a new show, there's always a new piece of work. I remember when we lost a client because the show closed, right? That happens. There's not much, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. But I think what was heartbreaking about that experience is I found out I was out in Los Angeles and we have clients there now too, which is really exciting to have clients in LA and in New York. And I was getting on the plane to come home, and I found out that day, earlier in the day, that one show was closing, one account might not materialize. I'm doing the math in my head. I have people that rely on me. I'm in a bit of a panic. And I sat on the plane, and it's a long flight back. And I'm sitting there for 6 hours, writing, journaling, trying to, piece it together in my head. And that's the other you talk about. You have to bet on yourself every single day as an entrepreneur. You have to work hard. You have to, I believe there are people that say you got to go in and just be, you know, badass and hard. And I don't
mm-hmm.
believe in that. I lead with love. I try to work through kindness. How would I'm going to treat the person that I'm dealing with the way I'd like to be treated. I want our team to come from a place of mutual respect. Am I perfect? No. And that's the other thing I would say for leaders, be vulnerable. Tell your
I,
team what you're not good at so that they know they're good at something. That we're all here as a team and we're all helping each other.
I love that you mentioned few things. You mentioned how the information your CFO gave you. It reminds me of I don't know if you ever seen the movie The Founder about Ray Kroc.
No,
Um, he
I'm
as far
going
as
now.
the McDonald's story, it's a great movie, but one of the things that he realized too at a certain moment he didn't build McDonald's. He actually the idea came from someone else, but the individual he got from his CFO, there's a scene in the story where he's trying to get money or funding. And the gentleman, I think his name was Harry, his CFO, he told him that you don't make money from selling burgers. You make money from on the land that the burger is cooked, right? So having someone there that's business savvy and understand what revenue really comes from is very helpful for understanding that. And that's the same lesson I just got from your story. I know you're on a time. I could literally ask you a lot more questions, but I want to be
Oh, no,
respectful of
no,
your
I can
time.
take another 10 minutes. It's okay. Let's
Okay, another 10 minutes. Okay,
do another
so
10.
another 10. Okay, I have two more questions, then we'll wrap it up.
Great.
So what year are we, or what year are we now in for the business, and are we profitable right now?
We are in year 6
Year
and we
six.
are
Okay,
profitable for the first time. So just know that. I mean, and by that, I mean, there was a pandemic in the middle there.
absolutely.
And we went from it being, I called it VC LLC, like just by LLC. I think I formed a true business 2 years ago.
Okay.
And so 2 years ago, when I actually that would be when I had employees, health
Hmm.
insurance, was able to have an office. All of that came into place about 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago. And although we were very close to break even at the end of last year, this year, knock on wood, our first quarter was profitable.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, we still have some debt to pay down, but it's looking very um, positive all around. We just have to keep up the work.
Yeah. Do you recommend people that are 40? I know oftentimes they've been in the workforce and hopefully they're in the career that they want to pursue, but it's almost it what I heard from you is that you are already kind of in this field and you know about the industry and you kind of branched off from there. Say for instance someone's not in this, like the job that they're in per se, they want to start a business in the industry that they've been working in for the last 20 years. Like what would be your advice to an individual like that?
I think there's a woman who used to work at Google, and she contacted me recently. She got laid off, and she was just writing to people that work in the entertainment industry because she hadn't really worked. She worked for Google, and Google works with many industries.
Right.
And she kind of worked helping film and entertainment clients, but she lives in New York, and she kind of wanted to work on Broadway. So she wrote me, and she said, "Hey, can I just talk to you for half an hour about your career?" and get a sense of like what you're up to and tell me a little bit, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. And it was a great conversation. And even though I haven't found a job or a role for her, we're all friends in the industry in some way, shape, or form. And although I may not have a senior level job that she's looking for, I have clocked, oh, maybe they need somebody. Maybe they need somebody.
Hmm.
Waiting to give an intro to her. But now I'm realizing my next introduction may just be like, can you have a conversation with this woman? I found her really interesting.
Right.
So I think networking is not the same anymore. It used to be like you went to an event and there were cocktails and you walked around the room.
Hmm.
Networking now is finding out on, I use LinkedIn a lot. I use Facebook, even Instagram. Sometimes I'll DM a creator, somebody who does. The other advice I would have is put your creations out into the world, right?
Absolutely.
Like you were a cold LinkedIn message, but your approach, what I loved about it was that it was creative, it was concise. I was like, I just want to meet this guy. He seems to have a really like clear idea on you said this is what I want to talk to you about. This is why I find you interesting. And I was like, well, yeah, let me give this person like an hour of my time, right? And I'm so
Hmm.
sorry it's not a full hour, but like the already waking up to like 10 phone calls from clients wanting more help. But I think at the end of the day, I started the other thing that really helped me, and I haven't done this in a while, and it's so good to talk to you, is so I have chosen photographers and videographers I have discovered on Instagram. I have hired creators who have just they themselves talked about why they loved a Broadway show on their TikTok reel. I
Mm.
served up things that say hashtag Broadway. So my advice would be if you're over 40, three things. One, understand what you want or you'll never get it,
Okay.
right? So it's I want to work in television. Great. You know what you want. What do you want to do in television? Well, I could work in production. I could do this. I could do that. What are your skill sets? What have you done in other jobs that might apply? Right. Two, um, I'm going to reach out to all my friends and say, hey, friends, I want to work in television. Does anybody know anybody that they might be able to get me a phone call with, a conversation with? Right. And then three, once you make those connections, do exactly what you did. Be thoughtful, kind, precise. Say, I just need X amount of your time. I want to talk to you about X, and it would just mean the world to me, and I'm willing to bend to your schedule. So often, I do get calls or emails that are like, hey, I just want to get to know you. I just want to connect. Okay, what do I do with that information? You're like,
Yeah,
I want to interview for you for a podcast. What times are convenient for you? This is what I want to talk about. Okay, great. I'm like, I'm an early bird. You're like, great, 8 a.m. I'll do the. So that's just it. I mean, what you're doing now is really how successful people should be functioning, which is I have an idea about what I want to talk about. I think there's a niche for it too, right? Do people need what you're selling?
hmm
And I think for me, I was used to working on Broadway on all these shows, and there were all these huge agencies. And I was like, but what if I was just a small agency that took on fewer shows and paid more attention to them? So that is the goal. And that's what I'm trying to do here. And that's where I found a need.
Last question. I know we have time. This is a question, and it's a very question that we already know the answer. Is it too late to start a business at 40 years old?
No, it's never too late. But you have to want it, and you have to be willing to put the work in, and you have to be willing to take the risk. But the best thing I ever bet on was myself.